Hey everyone, welcome to the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. Back here for another week, and I think it is appropriate for us to have a little fun while we learn No. So I decided that for especially those of you who are just getting your feet wet or you've been consistently on the study group and just learning things from a very general perspective, but maybe haven't talked to a lot of groups yet or started a lot of group cases yet. I kind of want to get some cases on the conveyor belt for you so you can get an idea of how we work them and the nuances that are involved in each case because they come in so many shapes and sizes. So I thought, why don't we um, put everything in the box and see what comes out of the box when we randomize it. So I'm going to generate essentially some random groups. We're going to do Build-A-Bear workshop, come up with groups based on state, based on number of employees, based on true, false, employer funded or no. We're going to come out with some basically example cases and we'll walk through Product Buddy and anything else that results with what the world of randomness gives us. And if you've got scenarios of your own, feel free to volunteer them, even if it's something that you're working on and just want to see how we work through it. Feel free to do that. But otherwise, I am going to let the numbers really take over. So why don't we start with our first randomly generated group here? And what I am going to do here, I'm actually going to share sound because I found a funny little tool that we can use. So first, we have to pick a state for our first group. So why don't we spin that wheel?
Jason, we need to do this for projects.
Ooh, Massachusetts. This is already working out great. I love this. Um, yes, we need to spin the wheel for projects and everything else. But okay, Massachusetts, that's our state. So what I am going to do is I'm going to do a random number generator for number of employees as well. So I'm going to set my minimum. I'm going to set my minimum at 3. I'm going to set my maximum at, let's say, 10,000. That should give us some nice randomness. And I guess I always have to prove that we are doing this truly randomly. So with our range of 3 to 10,000, we come up with 1,212 employees. Okay. Very interesting number as well. I'm already digging this quite a bit. So what I want to do now, as I give you whiplash from going to screen, we are going to get ourselves into the buddy system. Massachusetts has a heck of a lot of nuance with group long-term care. So glad we landed there. We're going to start with Product Buddy. This is how we start pretty much all of our case prep, as far as I am concerned. You need to know, first of all, based on the state and the number of lives, what products are available. And of the available products, availability isn't enough. We want to know what the plan design looks like for that group for each of the available products. So, Massachusetts, employer groups, unless somebody requests otherwise, that's where we're going to keep it. And we're going to put in 100 plus lives. Now, this is a case where at just above 1,000 lives, I would I would say that this group is possibly good without employer funding. I generally, and Mark, I know you like to say this too, is generally anything over 1,000 lives were probably good on a voluntary case. But it's interesting that we rolled, like 1,200. That's kind of right on the borderline. What would you say for this case? I would say that it's maybe customary to have some employer funding, or maybe we look for a specific class of employees,
Hmm.
or it depends on the employer whether or not we really
Yeah.
push it.
Yeah, I would approach it a little bit differently in that I would say every case improves with employer funding. So every case you should present that as your recommendation. If it's a carve out, if it's a base plan, whatever you choose there, you should at least lead with that because that drives much higher voluntary participation, regardless of the size of the group. And I'll give you another anecdote, Jason, which you know about, which is one of our groups we're working with, which has about 3,000, but same idea. They kind of got the employer to subsidize 30% of the premium for those that participated voluntarily.
Yep.
And the effect of that was much higher benefit elections, like people maxing out their 401k plan.
Right.
But the employer didn't have to commit to paying for a certain number of people. They only paid for those that participated. So from their perspective, they were giving value to those that really wanted it. And our participation was probably the same as what we would have seen if with another group, but because of the subsidy, people bought more coverage. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but you should always suggest it and encourage them to do that regardless of their group size.
Yeah, I thought the subsidy was really, really interesting. It just kind of gives rise to the amount of ways you can do employer funding, right? We've talked about the
Mhm.
fact that you can discriminate, right, and select a class of employees to carve out based on tenure, based on job title, whatever it may be. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of creative ways to do employer funding. But not only that, we have like your traditional list bill employer funding, sometimes either because we have to due to the makeup of the case and the particular carrier we're using or otherwise. Um, Sometimes it is you purchase the plan and we are bonusing you on the back end as employer funding. And we also have cases like this subsidy. I'm not just going to hand this out. You have to show a level of interest and we will reimburse you for a portion of the premium. And that premium, of course, is on a giant slider, right? Between 1 and 100%, essentially, right? You could theoretically do a subsidy where it is, again, only for those who participate, but you're actually paying 100% of the premium, right? So it kind of requires action, engagement from the employees. But there is obviously reward for that participation and engagement. And like you said, if a certain percentage is being subsidized, I'm going to make the most of that and try to get the most savings I can, or, try to get it to the budget that I had set aside for this plus the subsidy, right? So, very interesting case in Massachusetts. Um, so we have Trustmark that's available, Transamerica, and the Standard. Those are our three carriers, but four products, right? Because Trustmark gives us the Life Plus Care and Universal Life Events. What you'll notice is for Trustmark's Universal Life Events, we do not have an extension of benefits rider available. For Transamerica, we don't have either. We don't have extension or restoration in this case. And for the Standard, no extension or restoration either. So we are quite limited. We were even more limited for quite a while until Life Plus Care came along that kind of has a full plan design available for us, which is a great thing because I have a couple of agents that I'm really close with that are in Massachusetts that have had group relationships over the years, and it's always kind of, oh, I have a group. Let's see what we have. Suboptimal options, given that there's no extension and restoration, but we have to remember, and it's not like we haven't given it the old college try, but some access to long-term care is certainly better than no access to long-term care whatsoever. So we always give it our best try, but now we're seeing a bit more highly leveraged plan design that's available in Massachusetts, which is really nice to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah. Can I add something to as well, Jason?
Yes.
What we're doing on our side is when we get a case from one of you or just, from a broker that's coming to us, we usually will put that into our CRM. And really important to have the number of lives in the state that you can search later because we're seeing so many new products and changes in the marketplace, that while we might not have a solution that you're looking for small groups in Massachusetts today, probably in 2 months we will. For example, we do have a traditional carrier that's offering their products for worksite now. And as long as you fund at least 25 lives, you can get guaranteed issue underwriting on it. I didn't know that we'd have that product last week, but we found this out on Monday. So we'll be adding a lot of new options to this, and you'll have your CRM so you can go back in a month or two and say, well, let me go back to Product Buddy and see, has that outcome changed?
Right.
Um,
100%. Even
yeah.
with Trustmark, um, very recently, a number of changes. A lot of these changes happen almost faster than we can update Product Buddy. We make at least anywhere from 2 to 4 changes every single week within Product Buddy to try to stay accurate to the changing landscape. But recently, Trustmark has changed around their stance on employer funding and now actually has a very solid and well spoken for stance on employer funding. And I can pull up a little bit of that for you actually. Um, while I am pulling that up, um, they've also made changes to the Life Plus Care product, offering 6% acceleration of the death benefit, where previously there was only a 4% acceleration of the death benefit. So that's another big benefit to be able to access more of your monthly long-term care benefit at rates that are not going to blow the roof off the plan. That is something I'd sign up for. So Trustmark, but really all of our carriers are making decisions on these products to be more long-term care minded, number one. But number two, we're starting to see a little bit of a shift toward let's accommodate some of these smaller groups, but under the condition that there is some employer funding that is part of this case, some guaranteed spread of risk, which is something we've only been barking at the moon about for the last year and a half, 2 years. So it's nice to see this actually coming to fruition on the carrier side. Um, Mark, could you talk to the group real quick while I pull up Trustmark's employer funding rules? Any other
Mhm.
thoughts on Massachusetts, on Trustmark Life Plus Care, anything of that nature?
Yeah, it's funny that your randomizer chose, this state, obviously one of the
Perfect.
tougher states, but that's a good, case study. I do like the Life Plus Care better than the UL, even if they both had the same riders. It's the term life to 121 concept, I think has been more well received than the universal life. It just appeals to a broader range of clients, I think. And ironically, the term life is a little bit more expensive than the universal life, which you wouldn't necessarily expect, but it's because it has a lot more guarantees
Right.
in it, and it doesn't cost much more to get those guarantees. So anytime I have the ability to get the Life Plus Care and I'm choosing between them, I'm almost always recommending that at this point.
Yeah. And the Life Plus Care product is really the only product, not really ULE, that we're seeing from Trustmark that's making a concerted effort to welcome employer funding and allow cases with a smaller number of lives than we've seen Trustmark take in the past. So, what you're looking at here is just a little bit of a table for employer funding. And the big highlight here is the 25 to 99 employee column here, because this is a market that Trustmark was not interested in, was DTQing even a month ago. And now with these new employer funded rules, they have the ability to take on these groups. It is going to be a case of all employees needing to be funded for groups of this size in order for Trustmark to take the case. But there are buy-ups with these cases, and there is an actual stated minimum employer paid benefit. So we're looking at the death benefit here. 20,000 to 30,000 of death benefit for all employees is what's going to unlock this case for Trustmark Life Plus Care, and we're seeing a guaranteed issue limit of 100,000, which is pretty good as far as I'm concerned. It compares pretty evenly with the rest of the market that takes this size segment of groups, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'll also just add something. It's probably obvious to most of you, but this is the life insurance amount, not the long-term care amount.
Correct.
So these are actually not very high minimums to meet. Um, and you can carve it out, like Jason was saying. So,
Not for this case. So this
oh,
is
I'm
for
sorry.
all employees for groups of
Ah,
25 to 99.
I was looking at the wrong column. Yep. Okay, so for Trustmark, they're a little bit more strict about that than the other carriers.
So
Looks like.
they're going to want to see a bit more of a serious spread of risk compared to our carriers who are open for business and have kind of always been for business down to 5 or 3 lives, right?
Yeah.
So
But I do think this has changed just in the last couple of months. So we don't even have this in Product Buddy yet. So if you do find a case like this and you're not sure if it's going to qualify, I would still ask. And we're RFPing the carriers, even if you don't think they're going to take it. I'd recommend RFPing all the carriers anyway, because you'll want them to say decline to quote DTQ. That's a good thing for you to have in your records to show the employer that you shop the market. And they may make an exception on certain cases. There are just some things you don't know unless you ask. So that's a best practice to just quote it anyway.
yeah, sometimes it helps in your conversation just to say, look, we did kind of an exhaustive search and some carriers actually weren't willing to release us a proposal. But the good news is we've got great carriers that did, right? That just kind of helps the case psychologically, I would say.
We have seen exceptions, for example, on Unum cases, because Trustmark is very interested in winning that business, given they're not offering the plan to new hires. And sometimes the groups want to keep the Unum plan, but only do the employer funding for new hires. And because they're adding enough new hires over time, they'll make an exception because they know they're going to eventually hit the minimums. So, like I
Right.
said, there's a lot of circumstances that you'll run into where you'll want to ask, because you'll find out you get a positive response even if it didn't, technically meet what it says on the flyer.
100%. So, um, the smaller size segment is the biggest news here, of course, but even previously when we had larger groups, Trustmark was, I would say, at best resistant to the employer funding or saying this is something we generally don't want to handle or administer. I think this is where they were angling, not just to have a term product with long-term care, but they were also angling for ease of administration with the creation of the Life Plus Care product. So I have a feeling this was in the works for a while, but for cases with 100 plus employees, we now have that employer funded option as well. So that'll work great for our 1,200 life case in Massachusetts. And there's really two options you can pursue here. Um, there's an option two of 10 minimum employees, option one, 15 minimum employees. And you can see the minimum employer paid benefits for either of those. You can see that the lower limit is lower than the 25 to 99 employees. Um, and the only difference between option one and option two here really is the upper range of employer paid coverage that you can do for the option one and the ability to offer voluntary to all employees. So this was something very interesting to me. We often get cases where we have groups of a decently large number of eligibles, over 100 lives, but the group or the broker comes to me and says, hey, we are only interested in employer funded for this class of employees. We don't even really think we want to offer voluntary coverage to the rest of the employees. Trustmark now has kind of a prepackaged option for that, which I think is pretty interesting as far as I'm concerned. Being this is essentially um, a case where you could look at just 15 eligible employees, whoever you consider eligible on an employer paid plan with a buy-up option and not have to worry about a voluntary enrollment for the rest of the employee population. So you can kind of keep things really tight, easy to administer, easy to manage, which I really like. So I'm glad that we landed on Massachusetts because given our little cruise through Product Buddy, we saw that, we don't have great options otherwise. We have extension of benefits stripped on every other offer. So we are dealing with your death benefit amount is your long-term care amount, and that is it. Again, being able to provide long-term care is better than not. But at the end of the day, if we can get extension of benefits, we're always looking for it. And right now, Trustmark's the only carrier that's able to offer it. So when we talk through Trustmark, what we're generally looking at for a large group is a case that's going to end up with generally a GI max of 100 to 150,000. The one thing to remember for Trustmark is we have that death benefit drop to 33% at the greater of age 70 or 10 years, whatever comes later in that case. We do have extension in Massachusetts. So in the case of getting 150,000 death benefit offered from underwriting, we'll get 300,000 total for long-term care. This is a case of a claim at 70, so we're showing restoration of that reduced death benefit. So 300,000 total for long-term care and still leaving behind a $50,000 death benefit is quite valuable. And again, more valuable than what we've seen for options in Massachusetts thus far. So for this case, of course, we would go ahead and download that one pager and get it ready for presentation. And then in Quick Quote, we obviously have Trustmark's Life Plus Care available down here. We are working on adding the 6% acceleration plan design to this as well. But you can walk through a number of different premium ranges. We have not seen a group yet qualify for more than 200,000 of GI with Trustmark at this point. Not GI, 200,000 of benefit in general. That's kind of their ceiling that we've seen. That will generally result in some underwriting. And we see groups range anywhere from 100,000 guaranteed issue to 150,000 guaranteed issue in this case. But if you're talking to decision makers, brokers, consulting with employees for this group, you can walk through any given age, any given claim age, employee or spouse, and really show them the pricing and value at whatever benefit level they're selecting in this case. So always good to walk through that. Of course, we also have in our census quote tool, if you want to take census data of a specific class of employees or even the whole census itself, you can populate that in there. And we have Trustmark's Life Plus Care available here for you to walk through that. And with that employer funded rules flyer, you can kind of dial everything in to something that works for you. On Trustmark's products page, so if you come down here, sales guides, products, and head over to Trustmark, I believe we do have that in their product page all the way down to brochures and forms. We have their employer funded rules here for you to be able to reference. And we have a nice comparison between universal life events and Life Plus Care. So lots of stuff on the product pages for you to check out. So Mark, anything else you want to kind of walk through for our first random case? I think this was a great learning one.
No, I think let's do another one. But do like your randomizer for the size group to like 3 to 200 or something. Just because we're not going to get a lot of small groups with your
Yeah,
range.
sounds good. What are you using statistics on me? Yeah, I think it's good to let's see. So as I share my screen, as I continue sharing sound,
Going back to the Wheel of Fortune.
the great thing about this wheel is we can eliminate what we've already chosen.
Ooh.
Vermont.
Ah,
Another really interesting case, and we're sticking to the Northeast with the wheel, so pretty interesting here. I swear I did not plan for this
I think
to happen.
there's an East Coast conspiracy going on here with this
And
one.
I think we're getting biased toward cases that are actually, you know, historically difficult to find a fit for, whether there has been a really good fit product that's come along recently or not. So our random number generator gets us to 37 this time. So why don't we head back over to the buddy system and we will head back to product buddy. Now we're dealing with Vermont. And just because we've probably taken on a case, whether it enrolled or not, for all 50 states. When we see a result, in the back of my mind, the gears already start turning. But if we're looking for an employer group, we're looking for the 5 to 49 range. We are left with one result. So when we're demoing Product Buddy for you guys normally, we're showing cases where there are plentiful results. You know, for small groups, we're seeing at least two options, three products. For large groups, we're generally seeing, four options, six products. This is a case where we're boiling down to basically one option with Transamerica. And this isn't your normal Transamerica plan design. Their UL10 is their most current product with long-term care rider. But in this case, we're dealing with their Trans Elite product, which is a product they only offer in Vermont, Virginia, and New York. Okay. So there's some nuances in how the product works in New York compared to Vermont and Virginia. So this is another really interesting sort of drill down for this case. So what we have available in Vermont and Virginia for Trans Elite is a product with extension of benefits, but no restoration. Okay, so with 100,000 of death benefit, we're generally looking at $200,000 of benefit. But what we are dealing with here is actually a chronic care benefit. So we're dealing with an older product of Transamerica's. We're dealing with a chronic care rider instead of Transamerica's normal 7702B long-term care rider or their chronic condition rider, which is very similar but allows for a bit more flexibility, including higher age ranges. So in this case, we are actually looking at permanency of condition required, okay, as part of the
not
condition
not
plan.
at, not in Vermont.
Not in Vermont.
No. So New York,
Interesting.
yes.
New
Um,
York,
but we
yes.
had, but we had a case in Vermont, and we wanted to use Transamerica. We went to their actuarial team, and they said we removed the permanency requirement in Vermont and Virginia.
See, this is what we go through all the time and why shared experience is very important. Both Mark and I have corrected each other already at points going through these random cases, and that just tells you that we are not winging it whenever a new case comes in. We're going straight to the source. Oftentimes, we're digging into contracts because, especially for Transamerica, I can say this for sure for Transamerica, they are not as uniform across all states as other carriers. Sometimes that can be a really good thing. Sometimes that can be something that requires a lot of extra studying. And so this is a recent case you were working on, right, Mark, where this came up?
Yeah. Actually, it was another Unum case. There's a lot of these Unum cases out there where they couldn't offer the employer-funded benefit to their new hires. So we presented Transamerica. It was very well received, but it did take a lot of time because they knew the traditional long-term care market. This is a chronic care benefit, doing our due diligence, making sure we read the contract and understand it. And all we did was we went back to the carrier and asked them, kind of what that language looked like. And that's how we found out, about that it does not require permanency. So essentially you have a benefit that triggers just like a long-term care rider would trigger. And again, there's not a lot of, I'll call it downside to doing that. So we presented to the client. They were thrilled because they were going to lose this benefit and they wanted to continue to offer it. So for us, it was a really good outcome being able to find a solution in a tough state, as you can see, to find solutions. And the minimum participation with Transamerica is 5 lives to get guaranteed issue. So they could fund the new hires and get guaranteed issue for everybody, including the voluntary buy-ups and the spouses. We had, a small GI amount and a higher amount where you could buy it up with simplified issue underwriting. So again, this is one of the reasons why we love to have Transamerica in the portfolio is they fill a lot of gaps, right? They go down to 5 lives in most states.
Very high
And
simplified issue ceilings too, highest in the market by a huge margin. I'm talking 200,000 of death benefit higher than the next closest we see.
right, yeah, you can get up to 500,000 or 1 million of long-term care benefits with simplified underwriting with Transamerica. So just a really good relationship saver here for us. So yeah, it's funny like how you're randomizing it, but yeah, a lot of case studies just kind of pop out. But this was a good outcome. So don't be afraid to don't shy away from chronic care is what I would say. That would be my moral of the story. Is even though we lean towards long-term care when we have it available, in a lot of states you don't have that access. You should definitely try to explore whether this is a good fit instead.
And I do want to give a shout out to the Transamerica sales team that we have, our wholesaler um, crew of people, because they understand that their product is very nuanced depending on what state you're working in. They have done a lot of work with their actuarial and product team to where text can be ambiguous, actually making those changes and making the changes we'd like to see. So, and they will always provide you a certificate for any given rider you could ask about when it comes to any of their products in any state. So we're able to dig through this. Um, I had another case study where I was working on a case, a couple of cases actually in Michigan that had Transamerica as an option that was available. And in digging into that certificate, I just asked for it kind of on request. I noticed the activities of daily living were actually just a tiny bit different from what we're used to. We're used to eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, toileting, continence for our 2 out of 6 ADLs. I had the Michigan certificate, and transferring actually wasn't an ADL that was mentioned, but ambulating, walking was an ADL that was part of that language. So this is the kind of legwork that we're trying to do to make sure that there are no bad surprises. And we always recommend doing that wherever possible, especially if it's a case where you haven't done business or haven't done much business. And wholesalers, especially at Transamerica, they're very good about giving you those certificates so that you can pull out something that you may need more clarity on. And they're always willing to go to their product team or actuarial and kind of dig into that language. So, not a whole heck of a lot to discuss. Um, with a Vermont case, we have an option that's available. And again, like Mark said, with traditional coming to the market, with all sorts of different carriers entering the market, I am sure we will. This is one of those cases where we will have more options for the state of Vermont as this market keeps maturing. But I do know we do have TransElite in our quick quote tool, and for the census quote, we do as well. One of the things we are still looking to dig into is pricing differences between New York, which tends to be on its own island, and Vermont, Virginia, unless your search yielded something, Mark.
Yeah, the Trans Elite is actually a little bit less expensive than the UL10, the newer product. So that's
100%.
actually a positive piece.
So just know that we have a number of different scenarios here. I know it can be tough going through a lot of different plan designs in the quick quote, in the census quote tool. One of our main priorities with these tools going forward is going to be actually having a state filter, sort of in the way that Product Buddy filters out products by state. We plan to have both Census Quote and Quick Quote ready with features where you can come in and select your state, and any plan design you see in the dropdown that's not available in your state won't be shown. So it'll kind of reduce the clutter a little bit. And yeah, as we are kind of hurtling toward a 2030 product market out into the future, we'll keep thinking about ways that we can reduce the clutter and only show you the plan designs that your case has available to it.
One more thing I'll mention, which is a Transamerica update, just from a couple of days ago. Again, like literally get updates all the time. It does say 4% for facility and 2% for home care for the acceleration percentage, for small groups especially. They've changed that now that they're doing 4% for home care as well now. So they've improved their product. So we'll also make that change in the system, but we just learned about it a couple of days ago. So again, good changes we're seeing as they're competing with other carriers in the market. I think they're finding it important to push for those changes with their underwriters and actuaries. So
And
yeah.
they're listening to brokers like you and like us. I think one of the things that we're really impressed with a lot of our wholesalers is they want to know, look, here's a list of cases we're working on. If we're not winning, can you tell us that we're not winning or we haven't won, we lost the case? And can you tell us why? And they're doing things with that information. So, the 4.4 acceleration versus 4.2 versus 6.3 with Transamerica is something that they've heard a lot of feedback on and have made that change, and they're going to continue to make that change. Permanency of condition in the certificates and contracts. They had language reserved for permanency of condition or not, right? And they've kind of made that judgment call in a number of different states where it's ambiguous and you've got that red bracketed reserve text in the certificates. They've decided to flip toward no permanency of condition, 90-day definition. So we're seeing a lot of these carriers in real time starting to understand the long-term care market from people like us and others out there who really know the long-term care market. Here's my advice from all the years we spent in long-term care. What can you do for us? We're actually seeing, favorable answers coming from them and a want to improve and be more long-term care centric.
Hey, Jason, you think we have time for one more quick one?
I think we do. I think we do.
So far, two cases, two different carriers, two different products, right?
Two
So
bangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have a third product. We'll see.
Yeah. Anybody want to make a prediction before I spin? 1, 2, 3, go.
Like roulette, do we get paid?
Arkansas. So Arkansas, I don't know if there's any crazy nuance, but the fact that I don't know makes this also a good one. I don't run many cases in Arkansas. Do you, Mark?
Nope. Occasionally, though.
Arkansas. Okay. 3 to 200.
Yep.
178. So we're going to do large group, essentially.
Well, yeah. Medium-sized group.
Yeah. Given that 200 is our max, I guess that kind of gives us a spectrum, right? Okay. So, Product Buddy. I don't hear too much noise coming from Arkansas. So let's see. We'll do 100 plus. And this is great because I don't know much about the state. So as a first time kind of explorer of Arkansas, for lack of better way to say it, I'm just going to click through the different carrier options in this case. And I am scanning the case highlights because for all of the carriers, we have algorithms set up in the back end of Product Buddy to tell us these three main things. Do we have long-term care rider? Do we have extension of benefits? Do we have restoration of benefits? So I am scanning all of these carriers. Arkansas tends to be a compact-y type state. So I actually see we have a pretty clean case. I've gone through all the carriers. I don't see anything for long-term care rider flipping over to something that catches my attention. And it looks like we have extension of benefits and restoration available for all carriers, all products that are available in Product Buddy, which is pretty cool to see. Now, I think we're dealing potentially with the burden of too many options, right? In this case, we are generally going to RFP all the carriers regardless. As Mark said, that's kind of our best practice. Let them say no to you, even if it's an obvious no. It gets off your wholesaler's plate very quickly if they're like, oh, okay, I can stamp a DTQ on this and get to the other emails I have to respond to, right? But in this case, they're going to likely take a serious look with all of these carriers at your case if you have a large group in the state of Arkansas. Um, Full availability, full plan designs.
Yeah.
So
And, and I'll mention one thing. So obviously the carriers are always kind of giving us updates on their appetite. Chubb has recently told us that they want to have multiple lines of business. So they don't want to quote just the life with long-term care. They want you to add their accident, their critical illness, their short-term disability, those types of products. So just keep that, be aware of that. We'll probably change our order as well to reflect that. But obviously one of the top products in terms of pricing and plan design and GI limits. The term to 100 too, I think that's kind of rising in my list, Jason, probably a little bit more than our order here. Largely because they now have a 5% compound increase to the long-term care monthly benefit in all the states where they have that term product.
yes,
So that's been a big wow factor. You already see kind of the insurance multiplier is very, very strong on this product. But now that you can also get a monthly benefit that grows, to 20, 30, $40,000 a month for long-term care benefits. Especially for those of us that come from that individual world, right, where you were looking for more comprehensive coverage. I think that's probably my number one choice now. And you can do standalone, you
agreed.
can do smaller participation, so a lot of other reasons too.
Yep. And yeah, I think you've kind of led to some of the changes we're looking to make, some of the improvements we're looking to make to Product Buddy. One of the things is there's not just an algorithm for case highlights, there's also an algorithm for kind of sorting through the carriers based on what we see in demand, based on what we see in product features, what have you. So the system is internally kind of setting a ranking for carriers in order when you run your case through Product Buddy. And so beyond just kind of tweaking what goes into that algorithm, the Chubb news is a bit more recent to us that they're going to want to see multiple bundled products. We have many folks coming to us with groups that already have a lot of established benefits and are just looking to add long-term care as their missing piece. So given that, we may see Chubb actually fall, from our algorithm a little bit lower when we recalibrate it. And one of the other things that we're looking at doing is for the case highlights, since we are starting to see, at least with the standard, and possibly with more carriers down the road, is we're starting to see inflation protection on these hybrid plans. And they're not available across the board in all states. So that is something we are looking to add to the case highlights. Do we have inflation protection available? And that will help you pick out, like Mark said, for the term to 100 product, any state that has the term to 100 available is going to have 5% inflation on at least the monthly access amount. So in this case, this one pager we have here, we have the term to 100 product in Arkansas. So that means we have 5% inflation on the monthly benefit. What we can look at is your monthly access amount increasing. So being able to access more long-term care benefit every month, but your total long-term care benefit does not grow. Okay. So think bigger straw, which to sip your benefits through with the same size glass. Okay. We can access more, but that doesn't mean we get a greater total. Okay. There are a couple of states, I believe it is Michigan and Wisconsin. Correct me if I'm wrong off the top of my head, Mark,
Hmm.
which actually have updated to show 5% inflation on the total benefit, like California and Utah do for the group whole life. And that's a brand new development.
Yeah,
So
that pricing is in the group quick quote now as well, if you want to see what that looks like, because it's a much more robust benefit. I think it's well worth it.
right here,
And you'll see that in the leverage. Yeah, when you choose it, you see how it's like 14 times multiplier. Really good pricing on that.
pretty unbelievable as far as I'm concerned. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get that affordability compared to even the group whole life, right? And access to 5% compound on the monthly and total amount. You
Yeah, so
won't
if you
see the,
choose like a death benefit of 100,000, which we can get with GI now too, now you're seeing like 20,000 a month, no health underwriting, and the
there's,
total benefit increasing.
I am not one to say, um, I'm not one to be particularly vocal when one plan design is so much better than another that you shouldn't look elsewhere. With the standard plans that are inflating the monthly access amount and the total benefit, and even just the presence of inflation protection in general in any form, um, it's really hard to compete with that. And especially in states like California, which may be limited on other carriers being available, other plan designs. That plan is really ruling the roost in California. I think in Michigan and Wisconsin, we're going to start seeing that with the standard as well. So just really interesting times. I don't think I could have randomed a better few cases for us to go through. I think that inadvertently had us covering a lot of the recent product news of late, and it seems like every other day a carrier is adding a plan design, adding some sort of availability, changing a stance for the better on things like employer funding or other process items. And as part of the team that works on these tools and updates new plan designs and adds new one pagers to accommodate them, more changes than we can, you know, uh, keep up with on a week to week basis. We're putting out a lot of new plan designs. As you can see, a lot of the recent news that has happened, we've already kind of got covered in here. Um, but we appreciate your patience as we try to get all the way 100% accurate to every single nuance. Who knows if we'll ever get there with how much change is going on, but we will make sure that the most important changes and the most important kind of plan designs, the most important updates are available at your fingertips to be able to quote, to be able to present on as quickly as we can after we know about it.
Yeah, Jason, just along those lines, and there was, I think Michelle had asked a question about, which carrier has a small group offer for the traditional market. I was at the ILTCi conference last week, so we learned a lot more about where the carriers were innovating and where they were coming out with new products. And I counted 6 individual carriers there that were looking to enter worksite with their individual products. So again, a lot of them are going to test the waters and kind of do it in a very deliberate fashion. You might not hear a lot of buzz about it, but for our perspective, if you have an individual product, there are certain advantages as well versus a group product. And having underwriting concessions, simplified or guaranteed issue underwriting, is a big innovation that we've asked about for years from the individual market and haven't really seen it yet. So I think that's starting to happen. So even though you see 4 carriers, you're probably going to also see a lot of new carriers that we're going to put into those tools. We're still going to kind of orient you towards the ones that we think are the market leaders in that space, just so you're not the experiment for a new product. But yeah, if you do find something where you're not sure if we have product availability or it's a tougher situation, I am thinking about these as alternative worksite products in some cases where, yeah, we have a tough time sourcing a product for an association or for a particular employer group, a 1099 group of employees, things like that, where we used to say the group market doesn't allow for it. Now we have an individual market that does allow for it with some of the underwriting benefits. So, like I said, just ask because it's not going to be the be all end all, but it's exciting to see what's happening.
No
Obviously.
different than the individual market, right? I was and still do bang that drum on the individual side of alternative products. You got to have them, you got to have them lined up, and the industry is really showing up to represent people who normally don't fall into one of the sort of, I guess, main offerings webs for underwriting reasons, for budgetary reasons, for age reasons. And that's why we have those alternative products. Equitrust Bridge, which is, beefing up to be a main offering all on its own with guaranteed issue underwriting. We look at short-term care products, that market is heating up quite a bit. Products with no height weight charts, products that take XYZ condition, products with higher age ranges or lower minimum age ranges. We're seeing that same sort of cropping up in the group market. Of course, as I'm saying, we're like 3 pitches into a 9 inning baseball game with this market. It's going to be amazing to see where we're at a year from now. We're just trying to document it all in real time so that when you have opportunities that crop up, you're able to address them. And we're always happy to take your feedback on any of the tools, anything you're hearing out there. Mark, I don't think I could have randomed up uh, from my own head 3 better cases. So I guess we got to thank Fortuna. Isn't that the god of luck, chance, whatever it may be?
Yeah.
That we got some really good learning experiences out of today.
Yeah, I think this is a good session we should do regularly along with the product roundup type of session. That was fun.
Good deal. Yeah. Well, that's good because the other day I was sitting alone thinking through this and I was like, is this stupid? And it turned out to be a winner. So, hey, take a risk, guys. You never know what's going to be fun. I think it's a little easier to learn when we're having some fun. So, appreciate everyone being here. Hope you learned 1 or 2 things you can take with you. We're always here to help with any opportunities that you're working on, whether it's spinning the wheel or a real life case you've got. We've got the tools to help you with that. Everybody be well, and we'll talk to you this time next week. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you.